Hey, creative souls, writers, word witches, thank you so much for tuning in. I'm very happy that you're here. If you're a writer, you know that maintaining a writing practice requires focus, energy, and consistency. But what happens when you have a chronic illness? All those well-conceived plans can go right out the window when you have a flare-up. So how do you deal with this while maintaining a sense of positivity? Because it can get pretty demoralizing. That's what I'll be talking about in this video. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Johnny. I'm a retired adjunct writing professor. These days, I call myself a word witch. I've been helping students work magic on the page for well over 2 decades. I believe I'm on this earth to heal the world through stories, whether the ones I write and tell or the ones that I help you write and tell. Thank you all so much for your likes, shares, and subscribes, and for helping me grow this community of like-minded creatives who embrace the power of story to heal. So on to the subject at hand. Having a chronic illness can be very disruptive to a writing practice and to life in general. I can speak to this personally because I live with a chronic illness called Mast Cell Activation Syndrome, or MCAS. I am no stranger to the potential tough days that sort of hover on the periphery of my life and my writing practice and my business every single day. It feels a bit like a bully waiting in the shadows to have a go at my weak spots when I least expect it. I can't say that I have found a magic solution, at least not yet. But here are some strategies and perspectives I use to help myself navigate the unpredictable nature of chronic illness while still honoring my writing practice, and I want to share them with you. Number 1 is redefining productivity. Having a chronic illness will force you to adjust your expectations about your own abilities, about other people's expectations of you, and about what productive looks like for you. Writing every day for hours or even every day period may not be realistic, and that's okay. Instead, focus on what you can do. Whether it's writing 5 to 15 minutes each day, writing for a couple of hours one day each week, or simply jotting down ideas when they come to you. Every effort counts. Remember, progress doesn't have to be linear. I see people get caught up in this idea of what they think a writing life is supposed to look like. But if you're a writer or an aspiring writer, if you're getting words on the page at all, that is your writing life. You're doing it. Being willing to let your writing practice shift and change, ebb and flow over time, especially if you have a chronic illness, is, I think, the key to creating peace of mind for yourself, especially around your writing. Number 2, creating a flexible routine. Rigid schedules don't often work well for people who have chronic illness. So I've learned that I have to be more flexible with myself and my schedule, and I've learned to leave more open spaces, create bigger chunks of time for things on my calendar to allow for those surprises when they do show up. And I've also learned to slow down the pace of my life in general. And I understand that for everyone, this might not be possible. And I feel fortunate that I am at a place now in my life where I can do that. And I won't say that it's easy, because my mind still remembers what I used to be able to do, how productive I used to be. And so it's a daily negotiation with myself. In addition to those, I also recommend identifying the times of day when you generally feel most energetic and aim to write during those times if possible. And on tougher days, give yourself permission to make a shift to less demanding creative tasks, like brainstorming or researching, or reading for inspiration. Be willing to move your writing appointments with yourself around on your calendar as needed, and rest. Sometimes it's best to simply rest. Number 3, set tiny achievable goals. When you're managing limited energy and avoiding triggers, big goals can feel overwhelming, and not meeting them can get pretty demoralizing. So here's an approach that I have found works well for myself and for other people that I work with. Put that big goal on your calendar way out into the future. So say you want to finish your first draft of your novel this year. That's great. Put that on your calendar for, say, December 15th. Then break it down into smaller, manageable steps and put those steps on your calendar as well. And then, like I said, be willing to move those around as needed. So it's a bit like setting up breadcrumb goals that will get you to your bigger one. So it may be something like writing 100 words, 1 scene or an outline, 1 dialogue exchange, rather than holding this big idea of finishing that whole first draft in your mind. Reaching and acknowledging those smaller goals that rest within the larger ones will send dopamine cascading through your lovely brain, which will give you the motivation to keep going. Number 4, managing your environment. For people with chronic illness, environmental triggers like certain foods, fragrances, temperature changes can impact health and energy levels. So create a writing space that minimizes these risks. If you need to, get an air purifier. Use hypoallergenic materials every chance you can. And stash safe, healthy, non-reactive snacks and drinks to keep your energy up while you're writing. Do this at the very least in your writing space, and if you can, throughout your entire home. And if you live with other people, let them know what it is you need so that you can be at your best. And I always joke often that I feel like I live in a bubble, and I sort of do. I live by myself, and so it's easy for me to manage the space. And fragrances are a big thing for me. And so everything I use is unscented. It just has to be. And for me, going out into the world is always risky because, as I always describe it with my MCAS, if you imagine a bucket, that is my histamine bucket, mine's always at least half full. And so if I go out, if I have a busy day and I'm out on mass transit and there are perfumes and shampoos and other kinds of smells in the air, my histamine levels rise. And when it gets to a certain point, then I have the spillover and I get sick. So I feel very fortunate that I, in large part, because I don't go out of my place to work either, I work at home, so I can in large part really manage my environment. And I think it's really important that you take care of yourself. And so if you live with other people, I hope that they will listen to you and understand what it is you need. And also altering diet. I manage a lot of my symptoms with dietary restrictions. And again, that makes it tricky to go out in public and eat in restaurants, and especially with other people, because a lot of people don't understand and they get inquisitive and it feels invasive. And I have a really hard time with things like that. And so it's one reason I'll admit that I stick to myself a lot. My life is just way more peaceful that way, and I have more time to write, so I'm happy with that. So I hope that you're able to do what you need for yourself to keep yourself feeling good and vital and strong and clear-headed so that you can honor your writing practice. Number 5, use tools and technology. So there are tools like Scrivener and Evernote, and these can make writing a lot more accessible sometimes for some people, especially if you're having a low day, but maybe feel like you have enough energy and wherewithal to complete small tasks. You can organize your ideas with these tools and get ready for when you feel better. Or I like to use voice memos on my phone to get random thoughts and ideas about a scene, a chapter, or a character all in one place so that I can refer to them later when I'm feeling better and more clear-minded. And on those days when brain fog makes everything a challenge, think about maybe using templates. So maybe find some templates online or create them for yourself, have them on hand for when you need them, or maybe resort to using writing prompts to find your way into something until the brain fog clears and the ideas start to come more naturally. So just remember that writing can look many ways. And I touched on this a little bit earlier, but number 6 is embracing the power of rest. So think of it this way: rest isn't just a break from writing. It's an important and essential part of the creative process, which is why I offer a thing from time to time called the Do Nothing Challenge. It's really important for us writers, and I think especially for those of us with chronic illness, to give ourselves mental breaks and to not keep trying to just moving forward in a straight linear line. It's that ebb and flow that we need to fall into that allows us to recharge and recoup energy that gets extended and expended from just living or getting overloaded by stimuli or scents or fragrances or changes in weather. I live in the Pacific Northwest, and I am not kidding. The very first weekend we had a damp weekend, I immediately felt worse, and really brought me back to the reality that no, I am a person with a chronic illness, and so I have to adjust my expectations for entire seasons sometimes. And it's also why I need to move to a drier climate, and I'm working on that. Before I knew what was up with me, I used to try and push through migraines and exhaustion and body aches. I tried to take this sort of mind over matter approach, and I'm pretty good at that. I'm pretty good at mind over matter, but this is a different thing. As you have probably discovered yourself, I found that this often leads to burnout and even the worsening of my symptoms. So listen to your body and give it what it needs. Resting mindfully, daydreaming, drinking lots of healthy liquids like water and herbal tea, soaking in an Epsom salts bath, and applying ice packs can get you through rough spots, depending on the symptoms that you deal with, of course, to rejuvenate your energy and spark new ideas. so that you can keep creating. So remember that resting is an aspect of your writing life, and try to reframe it that way instead of feeling that it's an intrusion or an invasion to your productivity. If you don't already, reframe it as something that is part of your writing life. Build a support system. If you can. I have found this to be tricky because, first of all, when we have a flare-up, the last thing we want, or at least for me, the last thing I want to do is be around people and especially talk. It's just too much for me, and it oftentimes makes me feel worse. And I've also found that there are few people in the world that truly understand what I deal with unless they also have chronic illness of some kind. So if you don't know of other writers who understand the challenges of chronic illness, and bonus if you do, like really good for you, I hope you do, you can look for groups that specialize in connecting people with chronic illness for encouragement and empathy. Because even if it's after the fact, even if you've worked through another flare-up and you're feeling better, sharing your experience on those rough days with other people who understand can make life feel a lot less lonely and isolating. And you might be surprised how many writers you can find who also have chronic illness, because both are highly sensitive. Number 8 is work with your medical team. This is also a tricky one, and I would say do this only if you have a good one. And I'll be real honest about this. This is hard to find. If you're like me, you may have found that it can take years for doctors to even believe what you're describing to them. After 7 years of dealing with my symptoms and being dismissed, I was lucky enough to find 2 naturopaths right about the same time who knew each other and could work together to help me find solutions to the symptoms that I was dealing with. And it was a very, very low point in my life, and finding them was such a saving grace. So many of us with chronic illness have a group of doctors who treat different aspects of our illness. If you can find a doctor, naturopaths are great for this, who do like a whole body treatment, that's ideal. If not, finding a group of doctors who can deal with different aspects of your illness and be very supportive about it is really a goldmine. So we can really lean on them if they take us seriously, because there's really nothing worse than already feeling down than to have someone doubt or disregard your lived experience. And honestly, I have found for myself, it's better to sort things out by myself than to have that response from someone in healthcare. And so I have on my own done a lot of research and sorted out my own solutions, and you may have found the same thing. So if you're managing a chronic illness and you have a good medical team, they can be a big help in helping you sort out solutions for managing energy levels, avoiding flare-ups, and maintaining your concentration. And sometimes they may find that an adjustment to your current treatment plan can improve your ability to focus on creative work. Interestingly, I've discovered that a lot of doctors write fiction on the side. I've been very surprised by this, but many of my doctors have told me that they also write fiction. And so if you have one of those, or you can find one, they will understand even more why your writing means so much to you. Number 9, practice self-compassion. This may be the biggest, most important one. It's so easy to feel frustrated and disappointed when illness interrupts your writing, especially if you've been in a good groove and the flow's been happening and you've made a lot of headway. And during those times when we get derailed for a bit, it can be easy for guilt to set in. And those voices in our heads can show up and start saying, oh, you should be doing this. You have done this in the past. Why aren't you doing it now? And it's easier said than done, but having a sort of this too shall pass kind of mentality is really all we can do in those moments. And I have found that when I've had these long stretches of productivity, my ever optimistic brain, or maybe it's a kind of denial, starts to tell me, hey, you're over this. You've kicked this thing. And I kind of view it like a cold, like something that I have had for a while and gotten over. And I really start to believe that I'm never going to have another flare-up. And I start to believe that I'm back to normal, that I'm the person I used to be. And then another flare-up comes and I'm reminded, no, this is your normal. And I think for a lot of us with chronic illness, we have these little griefs we deal with along the way because the person we used to be before we got sick doesn't exist anymore. She might exist in here and up here, but in the day-to-day experience of living a life, it's just different. And so I have to remind myself I'm doing the best I can under some pretty challenging circumstances sometimes. And I hope that you do the same for yourself. So please be kind to yourself and acknowledge the resilience that it takes to keep creating despite these hurdles. And it's resilience upon resilience upon resilience. And we have to invoke that over and over and over. And be sure to congratulate yourself for sticking with it and for not letting it completely derail you to the point of giving up. As I always tell my students and clients, honoring your impulse to write is an act of self-love, and so is showing yourself compassion and grace. And I think this may even be more true for people who have chronic illness. Lastly, number 10, celebrate every accomplishment, and I mean everyone. No matter how small or insignificant you might view your progress, every word written is a reason to celebrate, whether it's finishing a paragraph, rereading what you wrote last, or simply making a note about where you'll pick up when you're feeling better. Tracking your efforts will keep you involved, will keep you engaged. I recommend keeping a notebook or a digital file where you can log your accomplishments, or as mentioned in number 3 earlier, schedule them on your calendar. And be okay with needing to reschedule when you're having a rough day. Then when you've accomplished writing 2 pages or revising a scene or getting a little research done, treat yourself to something nice or fun, depending on the accomplishment and of course your budget. And when you do that, you'll get a double hit of dopamine. First for finishing the task, and then second from the enjoyment of your reward. And over time, these wins will remind you of your strength and of your progress, and each one of those will propel you on to the next. So some final thoughts. Living with a chronic illness doesn't mean you have to give up your writing dreams. It means finding new ways to approach them and being kind to yourself in the process. By adapting your practice to fit your health and working within your unique limitations, you can keep your creative spirit alive and thriving. And remember this, your unique perspective as someone who navigates these challenges, even if they never find their way into your writing, into your stories, brings a depth and authenticity to your writing. And that's what the world needs. So keep writing, even if it's just one word at a time. Because as Margaret Atwood once said, a word after a word after a word is power. And remember, you are a writer, no matter your pace. Sending you mad writing mojo. Happy writing.